Here we go. Another episode of the All 32 podcast. Mike Giardi alongside Will Parkinson. As always, week 17. It's here. It's all happening. It is all happening. Reminder, this show brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. And Game Time, best tickets, best prices to get you see any event you want to see. A lot of games to get to and a couple of games that we have to rehash from Christmas Day. Netflix post game halftime shows not so great, but they didn't actually, the streaming thing actually worked. There wasn't too much buffering. I did get confused on the second game because I went to the normal TV. When I came back to it, it was like kickoff in 22 minutes. I'm like, no, kickoff is supposed to be now, and it was the play now button. I'm like, where did this come from? What are we doing? So
you really just aged yourself there.
Yeah, I know. No, it took me like 3 minutes to figure out. Like, they didn't delay the game. You idiot. Just hit fast forward, and you're going to be there. So.
The biggest topic of conversation on Christmas dinner, besides us joking about Leo crop dusting the pod last episode, what was RG3's ring? We've been trying. I cannot figure it out. I did a full Twitter search. I talked to like six of like our mutual friends in the industry. No one knows what that ring is from. It's the biggest ring I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's not a Super Bowl ring. Is it like a high school class ring? Like, what is it?
Did he just buy a ring?
I wouldn't put it past him.
I gotta say, so I'm like I said, I was not a big fan of the pre-post. Like
you putting all these people together that have never worked with together
before.
But
when you have to try as hard as RG3 is to say something cool, and like he was doing the walk and talk, and he was trying to be funny and like say, and I'm just like, dude, just give me the friggin'. Can you give me the meat and potatoes? Yeah. You're a quarterback. You played in the league. Like, I shouldn't have to depend on Mina Kimes, and God bless Mina Kimes for like researching and doing her homework. But like, I shouldn't have to depend on Mina Kimes to give me, some sort of X's and O type thing. You're the quarterback, for God's sake.
Yeah, you're on the set because you played with Lamar and X's and O's guy. What are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, bitching about that. But let's get to those two Christmas Day games, because the Chiefs beat the Steelers 29-10. They're now 15-1. They are the number one seed that is locked in the AFC. And to me, and this has started to brew maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, but now with the addition of Hollywood Brown the last couple games, it feels like all of a sudden, once again, the Chiefs are, not that they weren't figuring it out before, they were winning close games, 10-1 score games, but it's like the offense that has really had to sort of 10, 12 play drives, and everything had been so drawn out, and like you had to be so perfect. And Pat, in a lot of cases, was able to be perfect, especially late in games. It feels like now it's opening up for them in a way that it hasn't in a couple of years. And you go, here we go again. Kansas City Chiefs rounding into the proper form as we head into January and February.
Yeah, I feel like one of two paths is coming for the Chiefs. We're either talking about a three-peat. First one? I don't know. It's going to be incredible if they pull that off.
Right.
Or I think we're talking about like 2011 Packers, 2010 Patriots level of like 16-1, 15-1. Obviously, I think the Patriots were 14-2 in 2010, and then Packers 15-1 and 11, and like just losing the divisional round. And you're like, what just happened? Right. Like, I don't feel like they're. You think they're going to get like, I know they're getting better and stuff, and like it does feel like every week it's a few calls here, a few calls there. Mike, it's very interesting. The Chiefs are a little bit. I know they're not similar to those Patriots teams in a lot of ways, either end of the dynasties, but they are in a lot of ways that they don't beat themselves. They really don't. They don't. I know everyone can complain about the refs, and we all do it, and yeah, I'm sure that is a factor in some games. But like, they have the best player on the planet. They have probably the best coach on the planet. And they don't beat themselves. And other teams make the stupid turnovers. Other teams cost themselves with the stupid, penalties, or, not controlling their emotions, or they have the missed assignment, not the Chiefs. And it feels like, as talented as they are, they're just such a sound football team. Even Sunday, right? George Pickens doesn't run his route hard at all. He allows, Eric Reed to, not have to respect that. And he's able to cut across. And I mean, Russ shouldn't have thrown the ball anyways, but it doesn't matter. The point is, the Steelers made a team who usually doesn't make mistakes was making a lot of mistakes. And it's just, even some of the fumbles, Freiermuth by the end of the half, it was 8 fumbles. It's just, they don't beat themselves. And it makes it so much harder to be a team where not only do you have to be perfect, and we can joke at the refs and the whole thing, and you have to beat them as well, but you have to beat the best player in the sport and not make mistakes. And it's really hard to do. And again, I think we talked about it last week of, hey, it was, the Bills, the Ravens, who's the favorite in the AFC. And I think the Chiefs are the favorite until they're not. As much as this was one of their better performances, I will say. I thought they came ready to play, and I thought Pittsburgh is very much spiraling. And a lot of the guys who were overachieving for a large majority of the year have kind of turned back into pumpkins a little bit. Specifically, Russ has started to be a little
Denver Broncos Russ, or a late
Seattle run.
Seattle,
and it's getting late early for them. I know it's late in the year, but you got my point.
I think the comparison to the Patriots when they were at the height of their dynasty, both at the beginning and at the end, is apt and fair. Those Patriot teams weren't always the most talented teams. They did have the best quarterback, just as Kansas City has the best quarterback, but they got into all those situations where I actually heard Devin McCourty talking about this on a podcast.
By the way, that was the best part of the Netflix. Just they're like, hey, here's the McCourty brothers. They know each other, so let's let them talk.
Just let them go. He was on with Chris Sims. I think it was in the Sunday night pod that they do every Sunday night, the Unbuttoned Pod. And he was like, there was a period of time not even a period of time when we had Tom, it didn't always go your way. You're not playing your best game. They might not be playing offensively. He might not be great, but we just kept saying to ourselves all the time, just stay in it. Hang around, keep playing. And then the next thing you know, he goes, there's 2 minutes left. It's a 1-score game. We've got the ball and he's moving it down the field. And you're like, man, we weren't good today. And yet we fought enough to put ourselves in position where that guy will go make the play 9 out of 10 times. And that's what Patrick's doing now. But to my point about the Hollywood Brown edition, I think Xavier Worthy was starting to come on before Brown was reinserted in the lineup 2 games ago, but now that he's there, playing a lot more 11 personnel, and now it's not just one speed guy on the field. Now they have 2 speed guys on the field. Now all of a sudden, Justin Watson, who is like the sneaky fast guy, but not when he's supposed to be the fast guy, he's getting over the top of a defense. He's making big plays. Brown's still sort of rounding into form himself. Like obviously hadn't played all season, got hurt in the first play of the preseason, but he looks pretty good. And Worthy is becoming a 7, 8, 9 catch guy per game. And they're finding creative ways to do it. He's not having to run the crosser over the middle of the field when you've got to have it. It's, stops and it's quick wide receiver screens and they're still doing stuff with him in the run game. And their offense is starting to expand and it's starting to get Travis Kelce's never going to be the Travis Kelce he was 2-3 years ago, but he's still good enough. And now you're putting all these pieces around him and they're starting to get going. And it's like, well, now he becomes dangerous even more so than before. Like it just feels like I've seen this movie before. And while they're not as dominant as they've been, they're playing really good football. And it feels like they're getting better at the absolute right time.
Also, not for nothing to shout ourselves out here. We talked about should Mahomes play the 2 games in 6 days. Because we said if they win, they clinch it, and now 2 weeks off for the start. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how do they approach, week 18. But it feels like maybe even they go a quarter or a half, get them some reps, and get like a preseason game almost and get them out of there because Andy plays these guys during the preseason. It worked out exactly how they wanted. Pat obviously was way healthier than shocker than we then it was.
They let on,
yeah. Then they let on, which is fine, and they do that, and they're smart, and it works to their advantage, and it gets other teams kind of let their guard down a little bit, and it's like, oh, Pat's fun, and he's a tough dude, and it's not that
incredibly tough.
But now they really get those 2 victories. Even if you rest your guys, now it's 2 weeks off as opposed to a month off, and you can maybe eliminate some of that doomsday scenario I mentioned of the 10 Patriots, the 11 Packers, and other teams that are basically win every game all year, coasting, and then that break, it's like hard to get back up. And you wonder, hey, maybe they play them a quarter or a half against Denver. And if you're in the game, maybe you could let it keep going. And if it's, hey, the Broncos are playing for their playoff lives, they're rolling. Maybe, you say, hey, let's back it off here, Carson Wentz. I don't know. Maybe they blanket go, hey, Wentz is going to go the whole game. I don't know. We haven't been, obviously we'll find out as, it's next week starts, but they put themselves in a much better scenario to get rest, but not the dreaded too much rest in football when,
Right.
and we have talked about that pitchers and, and these teams where it's sometimes it does backfire. And the way they're playing right now, I actually think they probably want to like keep going. It's like Kelsey's starting to like get some of his, his legs under him. Mahomes is comfortable with some of these other weapons now as well.
Yeah. They become a very dangerous team. You mentioned the Steelers and sort of falling apart for them. I don't know if you caught some of the quotes in the post game. 10 guys on defense doing the right thing and one guy not. A lot of people feel like this is a Minkah Fitzpatrick thing. And when you talk about the guys that are saying the same things, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, you're talking about the best players. Minkah's the other best player. Minkah's not seemingly involved in this. And maybe Minkah's doing a little too much freelancing, but whatever. There was a ceiling to that team all along. And I think you're seeing it. And maybe the ceiling is now falling in on top of them. And they could be an easy one and done here in the postseason.
We talked before, I guess, right before the Ravens Steelers game last weekend. We were talking about who needs it more, who doesn't. We both mentioned, like, at least I thought we mentioned that, obviously, again, the Steelers are still in control of their own destiny, would be able to win could win the division, and Baltimore was going to play two teams that they likely would play in the playoffs. Well, they totally took advantage of a really crucial 2-game stretch. And I felt like the Steelers became a team that's the team you want to play in the playoffs, right? Like I want to play them in Houston. That's right. I'm like, if I'm in an AFC team, I'm like, oh boy, like how can we figure out a way to, get in a scenario where we're matched up on those teams. Just again, it's week by week. The NFL has always been like that, but in a lot of ways, like, look, I don't know if the Chargers are gonna be able to catch the Steelers. We'll see. Obviously, they early again, we'll see if they're able to do it. And even the Broncos, I guess, or whoever. But right now, Houston-Pittsburgh will be an extremely unwatchable game on Wild Card Weekend. I can assure you, it'll be a poop fest for sure.
It's so true. Let's hear from PrizePicks, the best place to get real money sports action. Over 10 million members, billions of dollars in award winnings. PrizePicks has made fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players and up to 6 for a shot to win 1,000 times your cash. Phenomenal deal from CLNS. As always, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And, of course, we will have our picks later in the program, to, in fact, end the program. Let's go to the other Christmas Day game that was an absolute bloodbath. The Ravens stomped the Texans 31-2. It's bad for the other team when Derrick Henry got tackled for the safety, and like the offensive guys are apologizing to the Baltimore defense saying you should have had a shutout. We screwed it up for you. But they absolutely just hogtied, battered, bruised. I mean, it was just an hideous.
Would you not argue that losing 31-2 is worse than losing 31-0?
Yes, the 2 is just there's something.
It's like it's like so just disrespectful,
and especially for a team. And look, we've been on this about how their offense and CJ has not been the same, and Bobby Slowick is. They seriously have to make a decision about him whether they want to proceed with him going forward. And again, this was a guy who last year was, serious candidate to get a head coaching job, and now he could be on his way out after year 2 as the OC. But that team is just a hot mess. They can't protect on the interior. They're having the same problems with the stunts, which was illustrated on the broadcast, which we talked about last week. Like, just the same things are happening to them over and over and over again. There was also a good thread on social media this week about, like a lot of people are pointing serious fingers at Stroud, and they're like, have you noticed the receivers are all in the same place on a bunch of these plays, and that's just not the way it's drawn up? So what's happening there? It just seems like a full-on breakdown there. And as you mentioned, like the Steelers, they're a team that I think anybody would be really excited to play. So I don't want to talk about them anymore because we talked about them. I want to talk about the Ravens, who last week pulled me back in. And I said it, and you're like, I don't know the schedule. And again, not that the Texans are playing great, but that was like, I talk about the the Chiefs and their offense starting to round into form. I think that the Baltimore offense has been the best offense in football this year, and they can do it so many different ways to you. You know, it's Derrick Henry, it's Lamar, and it's like, oh well, no, we're relying on Henry and Henry and Henry, and then Lamar takes a drive and he's just like, no, I'm going to remind you what I'm capable of. They're doing things that they did on the Greg Roman offense. They're doing the Monken stuff. They have so much stuff there for a defense to plan for and try to stop, and they are so capable of beating you in so many different ways that they're going to be a handful in January for sure.
Yeah, I just want to touch one quick thing on the Stroud thing. Has he been bad this year? No, not at all. And I still think Stroud's a promising player. But I will say, obviously, you know, pretty much the same amount of starts as last year, 15 last year, 16 this year, obviously with the injury. You know, touchdowns are down, interceptions are way up. We know that, obviously. Completion percentage down, you know, yardage is down, the attempts are way more. You know, things like, you know, yards per completion, you know, yards in attempt, QB rating, everything's like 2 ticks down or 3 ticks down. The one thing that I think is, obviously we point out is the 52 sacks this year he's taken versus last year took 38. You know, he's thrown for 50 less yards a game. It's like there's stark differences. I think there's a lot to play with that. I think we kind of maybe a little too ambitiously anointed Stroud. You know, people were like hesitant with Jordan Love, but like, and even myself, I was like, oh man, it was really an 8-game stretch, and then I was like, well, so was Stroud again in the last place schedule in the easiest division of football. Like, did we maybe jump the gun a little bit? And just Slowick plays a blame, the offensive line, the play. Everyone plays a role here, but Stroud certainly puts the ball in harm's way more this year than I thought he was going to be long term. A little bit more like last year wasn't high touchdown numbers, but very low turnovers, made the big plays and things like that. This year, it's like this team can't really be as effective if they're going to turn the football over once, twice a game on offense like that. So should rely heavily on Joe Mixon if they want to try to win a playoff game, in my opinion, just to kind of reset things. A lot of Nico, a lot of Joe Mixon. Everybody else can kind of can roll. As much as I love Robert Woods, one of my favorite all-time players, he's 33 now and like on his 6th ACL. From a Ravens perspective, them in Buffalo, I think in a lot of ways, they're different teams. And I understand that like they're in different, you know, Buffalo fans and Ravens fans are at it right now because of the MVP stuff. But in a lot of ways, the stuff that scares you about Buffalo is very similar to stuff that scares you about Baltimore, is that their unicorn quarterback at any given moment can pretty much beat you by themselves. And I don't think the Chiefs, if they have their way with it, like Baltimore, Buffalo, you know, the Bengals get in and you know, beat Buffalo in round 1, and you know, the Ravens slip up against, you know, the Chargers or something in round 1, and it's like, hey, those are the two teams we just absolutely do not want to play. And it's not that the Chiefs are scared of either of these teams, it's that Lamar's playing at such a ridiculous level that last year the MVP stuff, no one wanted to win the MVP last year. It was like one of the worst MVP years I can remember, where it's like, yeah, really, I guess Lamar's the MVP by default. They're the one, you know, they're the 1 seed, like, sure. And he was really good last year, but he was more like risk averse last year. It didn't feel like he didn't feel like he had the same pep in his step. At least I felt like last year.
He said it. He called himself fat, right? He came into the season having lost weight.
Yeah, and frankly, based on Lamar standards, he came in and was not in full shape.
Yep.
This year, it's like, it's the running. It's getting back to, he's impossible to bring down in the pocket again. I think we talked about it on opening night, Mike, where you said, I can't believe how much Lamar ran and was like taking shots.
Yes.
Like against the Chiefs. Like he was like a different mentality this year, and the passing's unbelievable. They have obviously a ton of weapons. Even seeing guys like Rashad Bateman, who, you know, look, I think me and you both like coming out of the draft, and he's struggled with injuries. I just don't feel like he's ever gotten anywhere close to the player I think either of us thought he'd be. But if he's going to be a contributor, you know, and we're talking about obviously Andrews and Likely, and, you know, they still have the Derrick Henry factor and Zay, like there's a lot of there. But like, again, I'm not diminishing that, but the defense is playing way better, which is obviously helpful. The Kyle Hamilton numbers, you brought them up on Monday's show, they're outrageous. Like now that he's back safety, they're actually a good defense again. And again, Lamar's playing at such a high level that if he even plays 85-90% of that in the playoffs, they're scary. I probably wouldn't pick them against Kansas City, and I'd have a really tough time the Buffalo thing, I go back and forth. They smoked Buffalo, but I also think Buffalo's playing really well right now. It depends where the game would be, and we can do that whole thing. Those teams to me just feel like it's the quarterback. The Chiefs, we talked about it. The Ravens and the Bills do beat themselves at times more than the Chiefs do, but man, the way Lamar is playing, I probably would vote for him for MVP. I know people get tired and it's the LeBron thing. It's, but I do feel like a little like Josh Allen winning is a little Jose Altuve in 2017 winning, where he was deserving.
Yep.
But it was a lot of like, this guy's deserved the MVP. That's kind of his time, et cetera. Where like Judge was a rookie, and I know it's a different thing, but like Judge was every metric. It's like Lamar has way more touchdowns, way more yards. Every stat favors Lamar. And now if they're going to win the division, it's kind of hard to argue. Before it was like, hey, they're the 5 seed. They're struggling a little bit, but Lamar beat them head to head. I don't know. I don't know where you'd go with that, but I think those two guys, they're going to have to go for stats.
Yeah. I'd say the best argument for Josh. I mean, again, we're talking about both of them having outstanding years, right?
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's gradations of awesome here. The best argument for Josh would be, well, look who he's playing with versus look who.
Yeah.
I think we would all look at the Ravens offense, especially don't forget the narrative going into the year. Buffalo's going to take a step back. There's no way they're going to be as good offensively. They're putting more on Josh because they don't have Diggs. Then, what did they do? Yeah, they brought in Coleman, but he's not a big separator. It's a jump ball guy. He's a rookie. Like, it's not going to be the same. And his leading receiver is Khalil Shakir, who I love as a player. He's not a number one.
No.
Like, by no,
they have like a million number. They have a million twos.
Yeah, exactly. And he's been able to elevate that group and take the narrative of they're going to take a step back and shove it in everybody's face.
It's just hard when you look at the I'm sure people that listen to this show, and I'm sure you've done it. You go on Pro Football Reference, you do the stat head, comparison. Josh's record is better, but the completion percentage is like a 5-point difference. Passing yards, Lamar has him by like 500. Touchdowns, he got him by 13 passing touchdowns with less picks. Got 300 more rushing yards. It's just like, it's like hard. But I also, if Josh wins, I wouldn't be like, wow, that's a fraud MVP. Like, I don't view it as that at all. I do think that similar, I guess, what Lamar did. A lot of Lamar's game on Christmas Day was very similar to a lot of the Josh primetime games this year, where like even the numbers aren't like outstanding by any means, but like he makes 2 or 3 like wow plays in primetime, and you're like, damn.
Yep.
And so I don't know. If I had to rank it today, Mike, the top 5 MVP stuff for me would be Allen and Lamar 1, 2 in whatever order. I'm not going to make my decision on who I would have theoretically voted for at the end of the year. I think Burrow probably would be 3 for me, and I'd have Sam 4. If the Vikings are the 1 seed, why is he? No offense, like why is he getting in? His numbers are better than Josh Allen's. Like I know he has KOC and Jefferson stuff, but and then Saquon he would be in and get a top 5. He'd still be a top 5 finisher with the way things have kind of gone about.
Yeah, honestly, like in any year, like they would all be deserving candidates. The type of year they're having. Barkley over 2,000 scrimmage yards. It's been awesome, and I could see him having some big numbers this weekend as they roll with it. It looks like Kenny Pickett is going to be their starting quarterback. We talk about a lot of big games. How do you do it? How do you go to the big games? How do you go to the NFL games? How do you get there? Use Game Time. I mean, you followed us here. You know how it works. We use it. You should use it as well. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Filter out the incredible deals for the seat. See the view from your seat on your phone so you understand what you're buying before you buy it. All-in pricing shows you the total cost up front. That's right, no hidden charges, and you buy those tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. CLNS says Game Time app. You just download it. Use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. Well, we were talking about Sam Darnold. Let's get to what is, to me, the game of the weekend. I'm fired up for it. 11-4 Packers at the 13-2 Vikings. Crazy that 2 teams with this record, same division, neither one of them in first place in the division because of the Lions, obviously also at 13-2, but with the tiebreaker. However, the number 1 seed still available for Minnesota. It's not over yet. Beat the Packers, and then the season finale in Detroit. which could be for the whole marbles of the division and the number 1 overall seed. Green Bay playing outstanding football, as is Minnesota at this point. Minnesota's won 8 in a row. Green Bay, I think, is the team that we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year. Had some hiccups at various points, and Jordan Love kind of took a little while to round back into form after the injuries, but he's playing well again. I look at this 2 matchups: Sam Darnold versus Jeff Hafley's defense, which has been surprisingly good, although, again, they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. They just harness it with Joe Barry. And it's Jordan Love and what he's capable of doing against Brian Flores. Turned the ball over a bunch against them in their first meeting. Again, Love was playing with the MCL, but struggled. So now you got that on tape. How does Flores attack him? How do you view this one? Muted. Unmute.
Oh, man. God, 4 years in this thing. I can't figure it out. This is a statement game for Minnesota to me. I think Green Bay is a team that people view as a bigger contender than Minnesota just because a lot of, look, dirty little secret here for, behind the floor. Like, people like when their takes are right. And
yes,
most people had Green Bay as a Super Bowl contender. They had Minnesota as a fringe playoff team at best. And obviously it is what it is, right? So Minnesota, and for all intents and purposes, I know the game got really close at the end. I mean, they stomped the dog piss out of them in Green Bay. And it was 28-0 before they blinked in Lambeau, right? Like, yep. Sam Darnold led Vikings, and they ended up holding on, and Love put up a Brett Favre stat line in that game, which was objective. It was like 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, 400 yards. It's awesome. It's Pierre Favre in the late 90s winning MVPs, throwing 28 picks. So if Minnesota wins this game, you have to – I know they've been kind of every week we talk a little bit more and more and more about them. You got to start to seriously be like, dude, there's a real shot they could go to the Super Bowl, because Detroit's obviously extremely banged up. I think 16. I don't know if the stat was correct. They have 16 players who have started games for them on IR.
Yep.
Minnesota feels like if they get the 1 seed, I talked to a couple players, in the Minnesota locker room, and they were like, that home field advantage we have is legit. Like, it's serious. And again, no offense, they hosted the Giants, a couple years ago in a playoff game, and Kirk Cousins threw a 4-yard, out route on 4th and 8, right? But that's a very different Vikings team, and they go and they beat Green Bay here again, 2 against Green Bay. They obviously swept Chicago. They lost a heartbreaker to Detroit. I'm talking about the best division of football. They're at worst going to be 4-2. Mm-hmm. Like, at some point, we have to kind of start being like, why not Minnesota? If Detroit's that banged up and Philly's got the Hurts issues now with the concussion mixed with, an epic choke job against Washington, and like, they're not going to be the 1 seed now, and the whole thing, we have to start, and like, someone's going to come into Detroit or Minnesota, likely. You have to start at least thinking, like, why not them? I'm not saying they're not going to be the favorite, and I'm not saying they should be. I'm just saying, we have to start having some of this conversation. If you're Green Bay, you go in and win this game, you're going, hey, Jay Love was banged up early in the year. Fluky game. We didn't come out ready to play. We kind of were riding a high of the Malik Willis win, and Minnesota's, we can come in Minnesota and beat this team who's riding high. I think I'd like to see kind of what Minnesota does from a schematic perspective. I wonder if Flores, I know, likes to be aggressive, right? We know he wants to be aggressive. He wants to send a lot of these linebackers on different blitzes, and, Van Ginkel and Cashman, these other guys, let them fly around. I would be curious if he tries to like go with almost the approach of like bend, don't break in this game, just to be like, hey, pick us apart for a 12-play drive over and over again. And like, we're going to wrap up and give up 4 or 5 yards a pop, but we're not going to give up the big play to Watson or Reed or Wicks or any of these guys. Like, they're not, and we're going to Josh Jacobs is not going to beat us. Like, you're going to have to dink and dunk your way to a win. That's how I would probably approach it, because I think the Packers are this offense where like, they kill you with Jacobs, boom, deep shot, like demoralizing, like and then if you're Minnesota, if you're Green Bay against Minnesota, you got to get Darnold's, his internal clock sped up early on in the game. That's the one way you still could beat Sam, is like, if you get him kind of getting a little happy feet, just a little bit. He's gotten rid of most of it, right? He really has, but we saw a little bit in the Jets game against Chicago the second time where the offensive line didn't play well. He just wasn't as productive in the Jacksonville game. So if I'm Minnesota, I would actually be not aggressive at all. I would be like, I would challenge Jordan Love. And then if you're Green Bay, I'd be extremely aggressive saying, we're going to get, I don't know what the deal if Jair is going to play or not. I feel like the Jair Jetta stuff is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess, and long story short, this is a Minnesota wins this. We're having a serious conversation of like, not only the 1 seed, but like, can you come out of this conference? Because as the 1 seed, you probably should be.
I think that, you know what? I think that this, for both teams, we have the conversation. If Green Bay can go into Minnesota and win the game, not that I've been taking Green Bay seriously, then that says to me, you can go to Detroit and you can beat Detroit. You can go to Philadelphia and beat Philadelphia. You're capable of. You're making
let me pose this question to you.
Sure.
Because I just talked for like 25 minutes. If I gave you the option of the entire NFC to come out of the NFC, to come out of the NFC, anybody not in the NFC North or one of the North teams, are you picking the North?
I'm picking the North.
You too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's kind of nuts, but
hardened from playing each other. And then you just look at the overall, like between the coaches, O'Connell and Flores have been awesome this year. Hafley has made a difference for Green Bay defensively, and LaFleur, I think, has gotten better as a head coach, not just a play caller, which I think is sort of who he's been for the first 3-4 years.
3 big-time home field advantages inside or outside.
Places you don't want to play. Green Bay no longer has the Aaron Rodgers. Oh, we're here, but then Aaron seemed to play small at times in some big moments later in his career in Green Bay. So, yeah, absolutely. And we know with Detroit, even with the injuries, the mentality that they bring and the aggressiveness they'll play with. I almost wonder, now that you've phrased that question to me, how would you rank them? I'd almost go, whoever wins this game would be my 1.
Yeah, me too.
And depending on the closeness of the game, whoever loses might be 2 and Detroit might be 3, just because of the amount of bodies they've lost and wondering, can they do this for likely 3 games in a row? I don't know that they can.
Yeah, I think it's hard to not. We've talked so much about Detroit all year. It is hard to ignore. I mean, look, they smoked Chicago last week, but if they can get a little healthier, obviously that changes things. Mm-hmm. And I think if they can get the 1 seed, a bye, that team needs a bye more than anybody. But it's hard to not pick Minnesota and Green Bay because they're just, again, look, both these teams have weeks where you're like, but like, right. I think I'll give Ron Ursillo credit. He talked about Minnesota this week and was like, you can't even do they just like when they get up on teams, like that's not even a thing,
right?
Like this one, like they're coming back week after week, and then they can run it up on you. They always are going to have the best offensive player in the field, no matter who they play. And on defense, they have a top 3 coordinator, top 5 worst. And it's also a really talented group. That's the thing that, like, the one thing with Minnesota, I don't think we talk enough about. We talk so much about Detroit and Green Bay. We talk both teams, like the defenses. I feel like at times we're like, oh, it's like just such a great team effort. Like, dude, the Packers have like 8 first-round picks of the 11 starters on defense, and the other guys that aren't, like, they just paid McKinney and like who was the second round. Like that team's really that group's really talented, and the group in Minnesota is really talented. Like Bernard and Cashman, these guys they brought in.
Yeah, their front seven is excellent.
You were on the Gilmore thing when that happened. You were like, "This is a really nice move," because if they're competitive, they got a pretty reasonably priced cornerback 2 or 1B, and if he's bad, they'll trade him, and they end up being good. And now it's like, wow, him and Murphy are like a solid group.
Yeah, their one issue with their secondary is if they get it, can they play a ton of man? That's not the
Yeah, I don't know. You're asking Gilmore.
That was Steph a few years ago. He's he's in his whatever mid-30s, 33, whatever it is. He doesn't run like he used to.
He was a defensive player of the year in 18. Like, it's a little different.
Yeah, it's a different time, but they're a smart team too. So that's you can make with Harrison Smith and Steph Gilmore. They've seen everything.
They'll be in the right spot.
Yeah,
always in the right spot.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be a fun game. I'm fired up for it.
I think it's the best game of the weekend, personally.
Yeah, and I'm hoping it lives up to it because we've done a lot of like, this is the game of the weekend, and then we
get to Monday
and we're like, we're not even talking about the game of the weekend.
Yeah, 34-31, awesome game comes down the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, let's roll with it. I like that. Let's go to the next one. Denver, 9-6, but scuffling against Cincinnati, who's won 3 in a row, 7-8. This is a win-in situation for the Broncos, and even if they don't win this one, they are in a win-in situation again next week in Week 18 when they play Kansas City. And as we talked about, we don't know whether Kansas City, how will they approach that, having locked up the number 1 seed. For the Bengals, it's win or go home. They can't lose, and they need help. Part of the help they need is for Denver to lose the game, so you can do this straight up head-to-head. They'd also need Indianapolis to lose at least one more game over the final 2 weeks, and Miami to lose at least one more game. But these things are not out of the realm of possibility with any of those football teams, especially with the way Cincinnati's playing. Denver was frisky for a while, and it feels like we thought they were a year ahead of schedule. And I feel like that's how they've been playing here over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Like, yes, indeed. What they did earlier, credit to them. Awesome. Put themselves in position. Still probably going to get into the postseason. But, like, are you afraid of them? No.
Are they not the 2021 Pats?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Started off strong.
Had a nice little run where 9-4, I want to say, and then went 1-3, 1-4 to finish the season.
It was like, oh, Max probably at best fine. And he's like not ever going to be bad, although he's become bad because he thinks he's like Michael Vick. But
wretched.
But like a year, it was like, hey, Matt can make 3 or 4 throws a game that he needed, and then the rest is very much like just, like just don't make the mistakes and good, really good defense, really good defense mixed with like a couple playmakers that can do things from time to time. I'm not saying that Denver, they're a year ahead, but the problem is I think we talked about this before the season. Like in a lot of ways, this is also kind of their window in a weird way. I'm not saying it's like they can't be good going forward, but like you got like, this is last year, Pat's, rookie deal, obviously. And then, he's got the extension kicking in and stuff like that. But, you have Knicks on the rookie deal, but Knicks is obviously a much more like, I think a lower ceiling, higher floor prospect. And you see the ups and downs. I mean, he's made some throws this year that I didn't think he had in his bag. Mm-hmm. He's also looked really bad at times, and no one wants to talk about it because like a lot of people picked him for rookie of the year.
Yeah.
I really want to see the Bengals win this game. I'll be honest. I want to see the Bengals in the playoffs in Buffalo and see an absolute just shootout. I think that'll be the most entertaining game. That'd be a really entertaining game. I'd like to see the best quarterbacks in the playoffs. I know we're not supposed to say we're rooting for. I'm objectively want to see Cincinnati at Buffalo, round 2. Of kind of a rematch of a couple of years ago in Buffalo. Some snow and the whole thing. There's a lot. They need a lot of help for sure. But like I said, it would be interesting to see if Cincinnati can really do this thing. And if they don't, hey, they miss out by a half a game, in the standings. Patriots game, Bills. The Patriots game, the Chiefs game early in the year, the Commanders game. These games were like the Steelers game. How did they lose these?
Yep.
And it'll be interesting to see, if that comes back to bite him, because again, Burrow probably works his way into a top 3 MVP finish if he can get them in the playoffs, because the numbers are absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to see Burrow. I want to see Chase. I want to see Higgins, that last ride, if that's what it is, in the postseason. Think about the possibilities, as you mentioned, with Buffalo. Think about the cold sweats that will be induced for Bills fans that entire week. The Mafia, like, hey, they came in and look, that was the DeMar Hamlin year. And shortly thereafter, that was a couple weeks after that happened on the field against the same Bengals team. So I thought I was covering that team at that point for NFL Network, and I said it up to a bunch of people, like they were tapped, like emotionally, physically, that team was exhausted, and I wasn't surprised that Cincinnati was able to come in and do what they did to them, because I thought that team they were lucky to get out of the first round against Miami and Skylar Thompson the week prior. But that would just lead to all sorts of flashbacks in terms of like, don't let Joe Burrow come here again when when we've sort of done things that you didn't expect us to do as a Bills team, and then have to face Joe, and he's as cool and as cold as could possibly be, and that would just be that would be fun. That'd be a fun matchup. So yes, I am with you. I'd like to see the Bengals get the job done. All right, notice how the days are shorter, but your to-do lists, they aren't. Power through your busy days with Factor's no prep, no mess meals from breakfast to dinner and anything in between. Factor has easy, nutritious options to keep you fueled and feeling your best, whether you like routine or you enjoy mixing things up. Factor has you covered with 35 different delicious meals every week and over 60 additional convenience options that you can bring to your box, like keto cookies, pressed juices, and smoothies. Don't let shorter days slow you down. Stay energized with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Because Factor's meals are chef prepared and dietitian approved, you're going to love not only how Factor meals taste, but how they support your goals. So what you got to do is you got to go to the website, factormeals.com/50Giardi. That's Giardi, and use the code 50Giardi to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code 50Giardi at factormeals.com/50Giardi. Again, to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping while your subscription is active. It is quite delicious and delightful. Let's go to your boys, the New York Football Jets, who are in Buffalo. This is still kind of a big game for Buffalo. Buffalo wants to lock up the 2 seed and make sure that until they have to go to Kansas City, or they hope for the AFC Championship game, teams have to come through them. So, okay, that's it. We don't need to talk about the Bills anymore. For you and the Jets, I have 2 questions for you. Is there anything that can happen here over the final 2 weeks that can change your view maybe on certain players on this team, bring them back, don't bring them back? And we've talked about Rodgers, but maybe some other pieces on this roster. Is there anything that can happen for you for the next 2 weeks that can sort of convince you that maybe somebody you were sitting on the fence on, no, he should come, bring him back, bring that guy back?
Not really, to be honest. I think it's very dangerous to make those decisions in a vacuum like that. Look, I think the guys the Jets should bring back have been vocal about it. I think, maybe I don't think they'll be able to bring back DJ Reed, but I would at least explore it, right? I think Morgan Moses, Tyler Conklin, some of these veterans that are, higher floor guys, I think you'd like to see them bring back. I think the Rodgers and Devontae thing, you'd love to have Devontae back. Rodgers, it's obviously TBD on a lot of different things. His willingness to even want to play next year, your ability, there's a million different things. So no, I think this is a really bad spot for the Jets. And I have a feeling this might get kind of ugly. These teams don't like each other, and the Bills have been very vocal about how much they don't like the Jets. Deion Dawkins, has talked on every podcast imaginable about and every show in America on how much he doesn't like the Jets. Josh needs the stat pad for the MVP. This is a Jets team that's, I think they've played hard in every game. I give them credit. They have not thrown in the towel, but it's you can see the golf course from here. So this either is going to be a close game, 14-10 at halftime, and Rodgers gets 500, and it's like, oh, this is a entertaining game, or this is like 37-3, and it's like, oh my God, like this, it's bad. So yeah, this game, I just feel like, again, with a lot of the Jets decisions, it should be made over the course of the year. And if Rodgers looks good this week and looks good again next week, it's like, hey man, like there is a really big sample size of like a really nice stretch of play here where the stats look really good and the eye test was much better. But there's the dead cap stuff. There's his willingness to or wanting to play. You don't want to force him on a head coach and GM, but at the same time, he might be your best option. So there's a lot there. I just think that it's really hard for, like, if you make a decision based on 1 week in the NFL or a couple weeks, usually that's what gets you a cardboard box and a pink slip.
Let me hit you with one more. It was, it's just I think just spitballing, but Diana Rossini brought up the idea of
Pete Carroll.
Your thoughts? How would you feel if Pete Carroll ended up?
I'd be extremely happy. I just speaking of run it back 1994 style. I doubt it. But yeah, like I just talked about this on a different pod. The biggest thing the Jets need, everyone has it. They're like, hires are not all equal, right? Like sometimes you need the offensive mind. Sometimes you need the defensive mind. Sometimes you need the culture guy. Sometimes whatever. They're all different. The Jets need a Vrabel, Carroll. There's a million other names you could probably list, but I'm going to come in and make this an organization that's competitive every year, respectable every year, and is going to be getting back into the right spot. I think, Parcells ended up being very successful with the Jets, but in a lot of ways, it was like he reset who the Jets were for a long period, like a 15-year stretch where they were in the playoffs most years. Yep. They were competitive every year. They were, winning playoff games, making AFC title. They made 3 AFC title games in 12 years, and then they haven't been to the playoffs in 50. Like, part of it's, Andy Reid came in and, the Chiefs were already kind of, Pioli and, a lot of those guys were there. They kind of changed the culture there, but the Chiefs were not always like the marquee organization. The Patriots, same thing, like, another Pete Carroll team. But, I'd be open to Pete for sure. He'd be a shorter term option. He makes more sense than Bill in the aspect that I don't think that it's going to be the Pete show over everybody else. Although at the end in Seattle, it seems like he had a little bit more of a hand in personnel than he probably needed to at this point. But if he's coming in for, hey, 3 years, I want to try to get lightning in a bottle here. I'll help you reset. We'll groom the coach in waiting, for me when I'm done. I don't know. I'm open to it for sure. I just wonder, would he come back here? Kind of didn't go great. Obviously when he was here the first time, but he was a very different football coach in 1994 than he is in 2024.
Interesting to me too, from a lifestyle perspective. He's been a West Coast guy now for 20 something years, surfing, doing all the things that he does. Like, I do wonder, but if you got the bug, and he clearly still has the bug, then what are the options? And where?
I think the Chicago thing makes sense. My only question would be like, what's the best move for Caleb? It's the best move for the organization, probably, because it's a proven guy. And I think does Pete want to deal with the president of football ops and a GM and waiting and an ownership group? Maybe, but
yeah, that's why that job is a little bit of a weird job.
I know it's a good job, but it's also not a good job at all.
Yeah. You got to be careful with how many people you're going to answer to. Last one, Chargers at the Patriots. It's winning in for LA. And they've had a little extra time off. So it's a 1:00 game on Saturday. We're taping this on Friday at 1:30. So I think that the, West Coast to East Coast thing should be a little bit lessened on their behalf, just because of the extra time they got to prepare for this game. No Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins as of Friday right now is questionable for the game as he comes back from his knee injury. They've struggled at times to run the ball. They could definitely use Dobbins. Dobbins has been there by far and away their best back. And certainly that's something that they want to do with Greg Roman. For me and the Patriots, the way I look at this is you gave a reasonable performance against a playoff team in Buffalo last week. And there were the 3 turnovers and 3 straight possessions that doomed you in the second half, but 24-21, respectable. We talked about what that meant for Mayo and the overall program. But to me, this reminds me of last year. Last year, they beat the Bills at home, week 5, week 6. I forget the date. Mac played really well. They won late in the game, touchdown pass, Mac to Gesicki. And it was like, oh, here they are. They're back. They have a chance. And then I remember being on NBC Sports Boston like the day later or 2 days later, and they said, well, what does it mean to you? And I go, it means absolutely nothing if they can't repeat it the next week. And I feel and they didn't. And I feel the exact same way about this one. Like, if you go and say, oh, well, at least we have this one game that we played late in the year against the Bills, and we gave them hell for 2 quarters and then had the late touchdown to make it interesting at the end. If you turn around and get beat by 17 points at home by the Chargers in a standalone game on a Saturday, then I'm throwing out what you did against Buffalo, because you weren't able to repeat that sort of thing. Like, here's a window to build a little bit of momentum. People can say that doesn't matter. I do believe at the end of the year, it does matter.
It matters when you're running back a lot of the same people.
Yeah, young team, first-year coach, whatever. Like, so, show me you can do that again. And again, I'm not sitting here saying they have to win the game. Of course, that would be nice. That's the goal. But, like, just be competitive with a playoff team again. Push them. Make it interesting. Play well enough that you say, okay, you've given me now back-to-back games against playoff teams. This is something that you can work with as you head into the offseason. A little, hey, guys, what we're doing is actually starting to take root. Believe in it a little bit.
100% agree. Competitive effort, tough, play hard. get a couple of Drake May moments, and you feel good. I think that's you lose this 24-20, and Drake May throws for 2 touchdowns. He breaks the interception streak. It's very funny. Like Drake, it's a weird comparison. A little Trevor Lawrence rookie year-ish from this aspect, where like the eye test is like, oh, looks good. The tape looks good. Some of even the advanced analytics look pretty good. And then the numbers are like, oh, they're not really actually that awesome. Like just if you looked at his stats, you'd be like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, maybe it's typical rookie year. But like I feel like he pops a lot on tape. So
agree.
It would be nice to see him play a clean game or 2 here to finish the year. Just to, hey, can you get it to 17 touchdowns, 11 picks, or whatever it is, and couple maybe we'll get one in the end zone running the football, and again, be nice to see a decent defensive performance again. I thought they were good defensively last week, and can Covington have a back-to-back weeks of decent performances? That'd be nice because it seems like he'd be a guy who might be retained. So him having a strong finish against some playoff teams would be good. And yeah, I don't. The Chargers have to win this game. Like this is you cannot mess around here. They've had a long, feels like a long break. Yeah, just don't get embarrassed at home to finish the year. I think and they played a lot of hard teams at home this year, for sure. It feels like a lot of playoff teams, or even fringe playoff teams. This would be a nice year to just finish it out strong at home. Maybe competitive loss to keep yourself in the Travis Hunter, race, but at the same time, not be totally screwed, with some of the confidence going forward.
All right, let's wrap this up with our prize picks. I've got 3 for you. I'm going to take Bo Nix against that Bengals defense for more than 1.5 touchdown passes. I'm going to take Drake May for more than a half a touchdown pass against the Chargers. And my sneaky one, Ladd McConkey less than 72.5 yards receiving.
Ooh.
And I say that because I think Ladd McConkey, who was there for the Patriots at 34, they swapped out with the Chargers to draft Jalen Polk, pick up a 4th rounder, which turned out to be Javon Baker. Those 2 guys have 12 catches for 87 yards, and those 12 catches are all Polk's, whereas McConkey has 69 catches, 960 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think the Patriots understand, and they do not want to have Ladd McConkey just add a little insult to injury, and go off on them in Foxboro. So whether that means Christian Gonzalez slides inside at times, they double him at times because, quite frankly, he's their best receiver. If you want to take him away on 3rd down, I would totally understand that. Or with a healthy John Jones who struggled with his health early in the year, but has been back the last couple of weeks and looks really, really good. That's the plan. I think in their minds, don't let Ladd go off. Just don't let it happen.
I'll go a couple ones here. Josh Allen, more than 213 passing yards. Like I said, I think this one may get quite ugly. Justin Herbert, less than 32.5 pass attempts. I think they're going to run the football a lot. And I think this game might be kind of a drag to watch.
Great. I'm excited for it.
And then lastly, I'll go Saquon Barkley, more than 111 rushing yards. I think with no Hurts this week, it's going to be Saquon, and more Saquon, and try to get him some numbers to get his offensive player of the year candidacy even stronger. So yeah, more Saquon in terms of rushing yards, less Herbert in terms of attempts, and Josh Allen more passing yards than 213.
That puts a wrap on this edition of the All 32 Pod. We'll be back Monday to look at the weekend that was. We'll see you then.